Hello and welcome to another episode of the eReads podcast. I'm your host, Liz, and this is my podcast where I talk about authorship, books, and all the different parts of the creative process. On this episode, I am joined by Rachel, and we have a blast talking about her book, Sushi and Sea Lions. And before we jump into the episode, let's learn a little bit more about Rachel. So, after declaring herself a pretty pink princess during her first ballet class, Rachel dreamt of sugar plums and began pirouetting her way through life. While studying to become a ballerina, she compulsively read books under her covers by flashlight and scribbled in her spiral-bound notebook. The urge to tell stories culminated in her graduation from Columbia College, Chicago, with a BFA in fiction writing. Never one to keep her feet on the ground, she traveled the world from Prague to Cape Town. Once settled back in Queens, she dabbled in journalism before working as an editorial assistant for a medical publisher. Seeking a more fulfilling career, she earned her MAT from Queens College and currently works as an English teacher in an alternative program in NYC. Rachel spends her time sipping coffee, trying to cook, and caring for her judgmental geriatric cat. She currently resides in Freeport, Long Island. Now that you know a little bit about Rachel, let's have a quick ad before we jump right into the episode.
The regular season is heating up. New stars are emerging, and that means more opportunities to win up to 25 times your cash on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection on a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's that easy. Let it fly to turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Watch your favorite players and get paid doing it this basketball season. See your entries make progress during the game or make new entries for the second half and the fourth quarter. 3-pointers, assists, rebounds, and everything in between are yours for the taking. Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
Rachel, how are you? Welcome.
Hi, I'm really excited to be here. I'm doing pretty good, I got that spring cold, but, it's fine.
Right, like pollen just started, and the other day I was starting to feel it. I'm just like, no.
I know. And then I was like, no, it's allergies. And then I got taken out.
I'm telling you, you can't. It like become like the sun comes out, and it's like, yeah, go outside, and then yeah.
Mm-mm. I was like, oh no. I was like, what's happened?
Right? Rachel, my question is, if you could have dinner with one of your characters, who would it be?
Oh my God, that is such an easy one. It would be Vincent.
Why?
Because Vincent Labate, who is the love interest from Sushi and Sea Lions, because I wrote him as after I went through some things, I'll just be honest, I went through kind of a breakup that wasn't a breakup, and it was crushing, and I was so upset. And then I wrote him as what do I want or think I need in a partner? And so that's how I created Vincent. And so I would definitely go to dinner with him as the dream man that I kind of created for myself. And yeah. So that 100%. I mean, he's probably a polar opposite to myself.
Really?
Yes, but he's very, he's protective, and he's caring, and he's a provider and responsible, and he's just he's a pretty good guy all around. Obviously, he's got some things, but he's I wouldn't say he's a problematic male character, but because some of in these romance novels, they're you could ask yourself some questions. But yes, I would date my own love interest.
I love that. Especially since we're talking heavy on the character,
Yes.
and you said he has some stuff. How how did you come up with that? Do you just kind of like discover who the character is as you're writing? What is your process for creating your characters?
So for him, um, so I'll talk about like the process of like creating him again, because like I said, oh, he was like, I really thought about, because this book is very close to me. So I really thought about, what I would need or what I would want in a partner. But again,
Right.
like people are not perfect. So
Mm-hmm.
what kind of baggage would he have that would come to the table? Because they are 30 somethings and, people have a past. And
Mm-hmm.
so he it was recently divorced and going through the motions of dealing with no longer being a full-time presence like in his son's life.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, and like wasn't really sure about like the whole soulmate thing, and is love really real, and um he's not a romantic, like that does not like fit his character because he is so logical and responsible. He's like good with his money, and he's more reserved, and then the antithesis to him, who is Daniela in the story. And so I was like, he would not be a romantic, right? And she is.
That's interesting for a romance.
Yes, he's not like, and but he does like, actually he does fall in love, actually in the story. Obviously he falls in love with her, but he, he's not this like, yes, the flowers and the bouquets and the gifts and the big giant gestures, and he's like more subtle. And I
Mm.
thought that was very important to him, because on the opposite, Daniela is all of those things. And she loves fairy tales, and she loves like Pride and Prejudice and romance, and
They're
is
polar opposites.
polar opposites, and is very like, your person exists, and it's,
He's like, no.
and he's like, no, it doesn't work like that. And like, she's like, Romeo and Juliet is so romantic, and he's like, no, Romeo's a sex crazed teenager, he's an idiot. Like,
Oh my gosh.
right. And so they're on polar opposite ends of the spectrum. Um, and so like the process of that is just really figuring out like what makes them tick, and then
Right.
where the story goes from there, right? And
Mm.
so, or like what they need because of the way they function, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Talking about that, right? Like where the story goes and things like that. Can you share a little bit about the difference between maybe a plot driven versus a character driven story?
Yes. So to me, like a plot driven story is like, you you start out, okay, I have these characters and they're in this world. Then this thing is going to happen. There is going to be a car heist, right? So then the next thing is, okay, so what are the consequences of that, or why are they doing that? And then the next thing is, well, now they're going to be on the run from the cops. And then the next thing is, well, they're in this like, high powered like money gang and blah blah blah. So then who do they work for, and who are they working against, and everything is very much like, where's the next plot point, et cetera, et cetera. Think like, to me, I think like, most like fantasy books and things like, like Marvel and all of that, those are like very
True.
plot driven, right? And you could definitely follow the plot like from the beginning all the way up to the climax, and then it like comes down, right? They're very similar. Whereas a character driven story is, well, you start and you're like, what does this character need, and how do they get it, and is it necessarily what they actually need, right? And
Yes.
so the plot is not just up and down, it's kind of like this, and it makes like all
1000%.
of these like little waves, like almost like a heart, like when you're on a heart monitor, it makes all of these like waves. So like for me, in the start of my book, Daniela's life is totally falling apart. She's
Mm.
lost, because she starts out like you find out that she was a prima ballerina, like she was pretty famous, and she has this injury that completely ends her career. And
No.
right, and she's, was in love with someone that she thought she was in a relationship with, and realizes that she wasn't, and then that's over. She's running out of money, so her whole life has collapsed, and now she has to figure out what to do with her life. And so she's like fumbling, and so again it's this like heartbeat that she's going through, and so it's figuring out how to get all of those things to line up until she gets like what she needs at the end of the story.
I would even go to add, like as you're talking, right? So I'm all about character driven stories. If you give me a good character,
Yeah.
I don't care where the story goes. Like I want to hang out with them, right? I
Yes.
want to be with these characters, right? And so like as you're talking and you're just like, this is what happens to Danielle. I'm like, no, right? I'm already invested because you gave us the setup of like who Vincent is and who she is, and right, like you've given us these relatable things. And I'm just like, no, like nothing bad can happen to her, where the plot, yes, I guess you can say you still have that, but it's more about the thing that is happening.
Yes.
So
And
absolutely.
the
um
heart of them,
mhm.
right? Because, and
Yeah.
Sushi and Sea Lions is a first person story, and so it is very emotional, and it's very raw,
Mm.
and like you can see, and that's important in a character driven story, whether it's in first person or third or omniscient, whatever it is. It's you have to feel what they feel, because
Absolutely. That's why you're there.
that's
That's why
why
you
you're
open the
there,
page.
right? Like
Yeah.
you want her, you want her to succeed, you want her to figure it out, you want her to be happy. And that's her like heartbeat throughout the whole story, is her figuring out, how do I get happy again? Because she's not at the start of the
Yeah.
story. She's miserable in the start of the book.
Mhm.
But you still like, but she still has her joy, because she's kind of, you know, again, because it is like a romance, we could talk like tropes. She's like the sunshine to his grump. And so she has like these like bubbly, like very like sweet moments. And there is like another moment too where she's like looking at people around her, and they're in love and couples and all this kind of stuff. And she's like, she says, well, I do want other people to be happy, and I think that means something. And
Mm.
that's like the whole like heart of her personality. She's like, I'll be happy too. I'll figure it out. You know?
Yeah. Listen, well, I'm already hooked. So like, and listen, and listeners, I am not a romance girl. I don't like romances, but I think it's because they're all plot heavy, like boy meets girl, and this happens and this
Ooh.
happens. But like, I want to know these characters. Like, I am invested.
Well,
Is tell us, well, one, I want to know, where did this name Sushi and Sea Lions come from? And is this a standalone? Is this a series?
okay, so Sushi and Sea Lions comes from, this is like it's a all very Daniela thing. So, and also like plays into the things that he has to find and doesn't like either. So she really loves the sea lions at the Bronx Zoo, and she'll like go there and like stand by the like by the pool and like bark at them and stuff. And it it highlights her playfulness as a character. And also, like sushi is one of her like favorite things to eat, and he
How cute.
hates sushi, and he hates fish, and he's not like very playful at all. But he comes to be more playful because of her and their connection to each other. And he starts to appreciate those things again as an adult, because he kind of lost that part of himself. So it's highlighting his
Mm.
opposite to her loves, and the things that she brings back to him. So that's where the title came from.
I love that. And is this a series? Is this a
Oh, it's
standalone?
it is a standalone, but there are going to be novels that are connected to like that universe. So I'm working on,
Oh,
yeah, so you
cool.
could read them totally out of order and you'll see Daniela and Vincent again because I'm working on the second book right now that is her best friend's love story. Her best friend Trisha, who is again very unlike Daniela. Very much.
Okay, so where do all these characters come from? Because you mentioned journaling as a
Yes.
component. Like how do you create these
So
lives?
Sushi and Sea Lions came from I needed to do something with myself because I was going through a very difficult time, and so I started journaling
Okay.
about what, you know, what I had decided to walk away from. Um, and then that spurned other things that like I'd left behind in my life because, I was also a ballet dancer for a very long time and I walked away from that world because, it can be a very difficult, very disciplined, but also very stressful world. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and, and I don't think I ever really came to terms with those things. And so, I really started like writing all of that out and like putting all of that out there. Aside from like, the heartbreak that I was going through, all of these other things like started to come up. And then that's when I said, well, you know, there's a character here. And so I started turning those things into a character and maybe embellishing her
Mm.
much more than myself. She's a little bit more than me, but I think like that's the beauty of characters. She's a little bit more extra than I am, but that's the beauty of character. And so that's where that came from. But I take a lot of experience from my own life and the people in my life. And all my friends know that. Like they know that her friends in the book are based on like pieces of them and like put together and created from that. And they know that like, some little tidbits of like their lives have like made it into the stories. And they don't mind, because they're like, no one
Yeah.
it's not entirely just me. And I'm like, exactly. Like it's a fabrication of all these people that like I really love in my life. And so Trisha is the same thing. And
Mm.
so that's been really interesting, but also there's a piece of yourself in every character that you write. So, Trisha
Yeah.
also has like little pieces of me kind of like thrown in there also.
I love that. I love that, and I just love the reminders that you've given of, um, especially when you're doing character driven, really thinking about who they
Yeah.
are, thinking about their journey. Again, and like sometimes in spaces, in writing spaces, it's a lot about like the plot. Make sure you hit the plot point, but what about the
Right.
character, right? What about them? And so, thank you for that reminder. I'm going through my second edits of my novel, and it really is character driven. And I'm just like, well, does this need to have more of this? And I need to go back and ask, okay, what is happening to the characters? Where are they going? What is natural for them? And so thank you for that
Oh, you're
reminder.
so welcome. And yes, it should really just flow from like how well you know them. So like I always in like when I'm writing a first draft, I I just let myself go through it. I just let myself write it. I
Right.
write out the scenes. I write whatever it is that I need to do. And then I go through and I find the thread of what is the thing that they are working on. What is
Mm,
their real internal struggle? And,
mm,
Daniela's is finding her joy again and
mm-hmm,
loving herself even though she's not perfect. When she's told
mm-hmm,
she's needed to be perfect her whole life
mm-hmm.
because she was a ballerina and to her that is perfection in everything. In in the way that she looks, right? In her weight, in her body. That is also an issue in the book. She has like food problems. She, in the way that in the way her relationships go, in the way that she's led her life, there's this perfection that she has strived
Right,
for, and people are not perfect. And so she has to learn to
right.
love herself when she's not perfect.
Well, Rachel, let me hurry up and get you off so I can go buy
Oh
this book. Tell
God.
me how can they connect with you and where can they find your book?
You can connect with me. I am pretty much everywhere. I am on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram at Madam Ray Ray. That is my handle. So you can find me there. I also have a Facebook page too that I post to. It's Rachel Corsini Writer. I'm on Facebook. And you can pre-order, because it's on pre-order right now. My book on anywhere. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it on Barnes & Noble. You can get me on Walmart. So that was a surprise. I know I'm on Walmart. It's mind blowing. So you can pre-order me anywhere, ebook and paperback, and it comes out May 16th.
Yay. Well, congratulations. That is very exciting. Listen, I got to go and pre-order that. But before I do that, any last words before I ask my last question?
If I just say one more thing about the character-driven story, I think it's also important not to be afraid to really let them mess up, right? So like let them mess up their lives, like let them have those like very high moments and then the crash too. Even if they do kind of start at a very low point, you can still like bring them up to tear them back down and then have them like rise up again. And because everyone wants to see that.
I love that. That's a good reminder, right? Like I was talking with someone and was like, kill your darlings, right? Like allow them to mess up, right? I don't think I can off my characters yet, but but let them have those moments where it's just like the world is falling apart. Fantastic reminder. All right, Rachel, my very last question for you is, I like to leave people with a prompt, something that can inspire them to be creative in whatever way that they do that. So if you had to leave us with a prompt, whether it be a word or a phrase, what's it going to be?
Ooh, this is a good one. Oh my gosh. What would I say? Dance your heart out.
Ooh, dance your heart out. Okay. So listeners, you got to stay tuned to the end of this episode to see what I do with the prompt, dance your heart out. I think this is a really nice way to include.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, Rachel. Please listen when we have your next book 2.
Oh, absolutely. I will definitely come back. This was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
She danced, but no music was playing. The way she moved took my breath away. The way her dress nipped at her heels as she spun kept me locked in her trance. She looked like a gymnast upon a balance beam, the way her feet skipped on the edge of the ledge. Fear was not what kept my eyes on her, not when she danced so effortlessly. She wore no earbuds. There was no song in the distance. What song played in her mind? Was she dancing and twirling to the beat of the streets? Car horns and whirling traffic and distant laughter? She twirled high on the ledge, spinning and never falling. When her eyes opened, they were a deep shade of emerald green that reminded me of the marbles I played with as a boy. She looked at me, and her dancing stopped. At least, I thought it was me she saw, until she jumped from the ledge and walked past me. Her bare shoulders were squared, and I tasted the sweetness of her perfume as she passed. She looked like she could be dining with those on Fifth Avenue or at some LA mansion. Could a psychotic break really be so pretty? "Ma'am," I called to her. She stopped and turned to look at me. Never did I feel so underdressed in my paramedic uniform. I called to her again as her emerald gaze held mine. "Ma'am, are you okay? The people in the window were pretty scared when they saw you dancing up there." She smiled at me. It made me smile back. She took a few steps towards me. I tasted her again, the sweet notes of honey and floral lilies. Her eyes never left mine, even as she bent to pick up her discarded heels. Was I the one having a breakdown? Was I the one out of place? The woman parted her lips that were a perfect shade of rose. She brushed her hair back behind her ear and twisted it into a knot, stopping the wind from blowing it in her face. When she spoke, her voice held me like a siren. Sometimes you just need to dance on the edge.